and specifically petitioned for my rights of inclusion, for my rights to participate as a citizen and also as a person living with disability. So they should have been making it easier for me to vie, not difficult, not putting obstacles in my ways.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to the analysis of Yoleno TV. And by the way, I know my sound system has a bit of issues, but I promise to fix it soon as I can. Now, I'd like to refer you to an interview that was done by one of leading political analysis channels in Kenya, The Bold. Now you can take your time and go through that interview. And that interview is between Kevin Odor and Paul Kigame. Paul Kigame, the presidential aspirant that was denied a chance by CHEBUKATI. So there are some interesting intrigues into the circumstances that involved around him being denied a chance and the circumstances that involved the perceived rigging of the 2022 general election. Before we get deep into those intrigues that I found in that interview, please take your time and subscribe to our channel. You can give us a like, you can hit the notification bell so that every time we upload such a video, you'll always become the first person to get notified. Now, Reuben Kigame made some exclusive revelations in that interview, and one of the things that I came to learn about is that IEBC actively excluded him in the ballot papers. There was a time that he was given some conditions that were only tailored at making sure that he could not sail through the pre-qualification of the IEBC nomination list. So he was given some tough conditions. That one of the things that he revealed in that interview is that they were asked to avail, almost 48,000 copies of IDs in about 24 counties, major counties. And in each county, they were supposed to produce at least 2,000 copies of ID. Now, that task was to be done in 2 days. And according to what he reveals in that interview is that CHEBUKATI never gave them prior indications or never told them in advance that that will be required, and that he goes further and says that in the previous elections that was not a requirement, but that requirement was given to them so that they could automatically fail in the nomination. The people who would be at the end of the day picked as the presidential candidates would be at least 4, because he goes further and says that that was a deliberate attempt, because according to what CHEBUKATI and through one of the lawyers said, that if Paul Kigame was included in that ballot paper, then the likely candidate that IEBC was fronting would not garner the 50+1 mark. So the reason why, if you look at the revelations, or if you look at the events towards the end towards the date of the general election, then you find that CHEBUKATI was actively fighting off these independent candidates, and mind you, the number was almost 50. That's what we know, but the number was reduced. But you see, Paul Kigame was denied a chance, but still went to the High Court to defend his position, and the High Court gave directive to IEBC to include Paul Kigame in that list in the ballot papers. So IEBC's lawyer rushed to the Court of Appeal and made some wanting remarks, that these remarks could only interpret that IEBC were truly working towards ensuring that one of the candidates won this election, because the lawyer said in the Court of Appeal that if Kigame was allowed to contest, then the 50+1 mark was not going to be achieved with the other candidates. So the reason why they were denying Paul Kigame that chance was not because of the pre-qualification, but it was the mere fact that the 50+1 was not going to be achieved. So that was a bit shocking to me from that interview, because Paul Kigame is one of those senior people in the Republic of Kenya, and his view is taken seriously. And being that he was one of those presidential aspirants, then I think the information that Paul Kigame has unleashed in that interview is credible, and it's not something that you can just wish away. Please just listen to a part of that interview that was conducted by Kevin Oduor.
Requirement. Does the IBC have the mandate, or rather to just inject such a protocol there, or such a process, without, is it not in law what really someone needs to do for him? The Constitution says signatures. They added ID copies. Oh. Now this was done deliberately, yes, deliberately, and also notwithstanding that it infringes on the right to privacy. Yes. You don't know what these guys are going to do with your data. The data preservation, the data privacy policy. So they used that to lock the independent candidates out, including me. So anyway, the court quashed that requirement and said it was illegal. Yes. Now, that should have put me on the ballot. Yes. But they didn't. So I went to the High Court and specifically petitioned for my rights of inclusion, for my rights to participate as a citizen and also as a person living with disability. So they should have been making it easier for me to vie, not difficult, not putting obstacles in my way.
So, dear ladies and gentlemen, in that interview, again, there was a part where Paul Kigame was asked about whether CHEBUKATI was compromised days before the election. And the revelation that Paul Kigame has given us confirms some of those things that we posted in August, or days to August. You remember, we said, we kept maintaining, and I still maintain, that it appeared that CHEBUKATI was compromised. So there are details that Paul Kigame unleashed in that interview. And one of the things that he talked about was, how did William Samoei Ruto know that 1 million votes was already moved from a particular region to a particular region? So that revelation was also an indicator that someone could have been leaking information to one of the players of that general election. And remember, by the time these revelations of 1 million votes were being unleashed to the public, the KPMG report, the audit report, had not been unleashed, and that audit had not been done. So the question that most people kept asking themselves, or kept lingering in many people's minds, was that how did this presidential candidate know about the 1 million votes? Then there was another thing that Kigame talked about, and he referred to the ruling that Martha Koome made, and he said that the ruling was biased and one-sided, and disregarded everything that was brought to the courts by the opposition leader, that's Raila Amolo Odinga. So Paul Kigame said he lost respect to the Supreme Court because of that aspect. So Paul Kigame also made some revelation, which, this is something very serious, because he talked about there being two ballot papers, sets of ballot papers. There was a ballot paper that had 4 candidates, then there was a ballot paper that had 6 candidates. So there was an algorithm that, according to what Paul Kigame is talking about, is that there was an algorithm that CHEBUKATI was trying to front, or was trying to work towards, that if the 6th ballot paper was to be used, then that algorithm would be messed up, and that maybe the 50+1 would not be realized. So CHEBUKATI had two sets of ballot papers, one with 4 presidential candidates, the other one with 6 presidential candidates. That was in the event that the courts decided that no, you must use one with the 6 papers, then they were going to use the ballot papers with 6 presidential candidates. And that was going to make it pretty hard for their preferred presidential candidate to win this general election. Because mind you, in the courts, the Court of Appeal, IEBC lawyer talked about the 50+1 not being met should Paul Kigame be included in that presidential race. So that confirmed a lot of things from the IEBC and the fear of CHEBUKATI and his team, the 50+1 mark. And mind you, you look at what Okia Umtata talked about during the Supreme Court battle. He was trying to argue these figures that the 50+1 was not achieved. So what IEBC law talked about, the idea of 50+1, that it will not be achieved should the 6 presidential candidates be on that ballot. Then you look at what Okia Umtata talked about during that Supreme Court battle, then you find that there is some relationship between what Okia Umtata talked about and the IEBC lawyer talked about, and that the biggest agenda of IEBC was the 50+1. So maybe that also confirms that CHERERA's allegation that the 50+1 was not achieved, and that towards the end of the vote counting, that there was opaqueness in the whole process. I think that confirms it. So if you look at the Paul Kigame's revelation about that lawyer, you look at CHERERA's reveal on the 50+1 not being met, and then you go again and look at Okia Umtata's argument that the 50+1 was not met, then you find that there was something sinister in the whole process. We kept talking about church capture. You know, I remember last month I talked about church capture. But Paul Kigame has confirmed exactly what I talked about in my previous video about church capture. And I made some damaging points that how churches were being misused to, to cleanse this government should it, find itself in the corruption, and that the churches be used to cleanse them. So, ladies and gentlemen, do you think Paul Kigame makes sense? I mean, as far as the revelations that he has put across. So, if anything is go by, then I think Paul Kigame has set the record straight. And I started off by saying that Paul Kigame is not someone you can just wish away. He was a presidential aspirant for this 2022 general election, but CHEBUKATI denied him a chance and said that the IDs, that he had not brought the IDs in the right format. But by the way, the issue of ID copies was taken to court by Ekuru Okot and other presidential candidates who were aspirants who were denied a chance. But then the court decided to quash that policy, that it was not a requirement for the ID copies. But again, CHEBUKATI did not include Paul Kigame into that presidential race. So that meant there was some deliberate plan for the 50+1 mark to be achieved. So I think that was a scientific way for CHEBUKATI to achieve the 50+1. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to raise my case here. Please, if you're a first-time viewer or if you're a regular viewer who's not subscribed to this channel, please support Yoleno TV by subscribing to it. And once again, I'd like to say thank you so much for all those who've been supporting our channel. And I'd like to urge you, as usual, to stay safe and stay blessed until we catch up again.